Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to present my PhD topic, which is about the improvement of outcomes in oncology survivors. My name is Noémi Podráczky. I'm a first-year PhD student and a fourth-year pediatric resident at the Pediatric Center. My supervisor is Miklós Garami, my SMS is Mark Hernátfői, and our statisticians are Gergely Agócs and Boglárka Szentes. And our vision together is cancer survivorship without preventable harm. And our mission is to advance the prevention and treatment of cancer therapy-related toxicities. We have two specific goals to support these. One of them is about hypothalamic obesity, and the second one is about a serious complication of bone marrow transplantation. I would like to start with my first topic, which is about multimodal interventions in hypothalamic obesity, which is a systematic review and meta-analysis. We treat brain tumor patients every day, and the outcomes are getting better, but the treatment comes with a serious damage to the hypothalamic region, which causes a severe, rapid, and persistent weight gain, leading to morbid obesity. This happens in about 50–60% of brain tumor survivors. I don't have to tell you about the consequences of morbid obesity, but I would like to highlight the most serious one, which is early mortality. And there is a huge unmet need here, since there is no effective treatment for hypothalamic obesity, leading to higher mortality and decreased quality of life. Current treatment options involve lifestyle measures, hormone replacement therapy, pharmacotherapy, and bariatric surgery, but the effects are only modest, and there is no comprehensive data on them. Which leads to our aim is to investigate the efficacy of multimodal interventions on HO in brain tumor survivors. The clinical question is, do multimodal interventions decrease BMI and improve quality of life in brain tumor survivors with HO? We use a PICO framework, population being brain tumor survivors with HO, intervention being multimodal interventions, comparator being pretreatment BMI or placebo, and our primary outcome is BMI or weight change. And our hypothesis is that individualized treatment can lower BMI and improve quality of life and metabolic health of survivors with HO. And if this is true, our clinical implication would be to develop treatment algorithms to minimize the consequences of HO. We conducted a systematic search on 3 major databases with the scene search key with 2 domains, and after a thorough selection and citation chasing, we ended up with 29 eligible articles for meta-analysis. We had 3 key articles, all of them about one of the most promising interventions, which is GLP-1 receptor agonist. And right now we are in the data analysis phase, and we are still waiting for some figures, but I would like to present some preliminary results. This first forest plot is about the mean change in body mass index after 6 months of GLP-1 receptor agonist treatment in brain tumor survivors. BMI is an important anthropometric parameter to assess obesity severity and treatment response, and is measured in kilogram per square meter. The normal range for it is between 18.5 and 25. Below that, it's underweight, and between 25 and 30, it's overweight, and above that, it's obesity. The study is positioned on the left of 0, favor treatment effect, meaning BMI reduction. The greater negative value means greater reduction in BMI. We included 3 studies and 52 patients analyzed on this forest plot. Mainly the studies were one-arm studies, either interventional or observational, or interventional arms of comparative studies. The heterogeneity was high mathematically, however, individual studies all point into one direction and were significant. The possible reasons for heterogeneity are differences in baseline BMI, differences in treatment protocols and dosages, and methodological differences between the studies. The pooled mean BMI change was minus 2.69, meaning an overall effect of average change in BMI in almost 3 kilogram per square meter decrease in BMI. This is clinically highly relevant, since magnitude of this BMI decrease could indicate an improvement in obesity-related health outcomes. However, it was statistically not significant. I would like to present my second forest plot, which is about the exact same outcome, but after more than 12 months of GLP-1 receptor agonist treatment. We included 3 studies here as well with 132 patients. And these were similar studies, either one-armed or interventional arms of comparative studies. And heterogeneity was high as well here, and the reasons for that are basically the same as in the previous forest plot. The pooled BMI change was here even greater, minus 3.18 kilogram per square meter, which is also clinically relevant, but although it approached statistical significance, it did not reach it either. These forest plots suggest that long-term GLP-1 receptor agonist treatment could lead to maintained BMI reduction after more than 12 months of treatment. The strengths of our study are that we included multiple therapeutic interventions and we focused on a rare and clinically important population. The limitations are, of course, the small sample sizes and the one-armed observational studies and the high heterogeneity. I would like to go on with my second project, which is about a serious complication, sinusoidal obstruction syndrome in pediatric bone marrow transplantation, and this will be also a systematic review and meta-analysis. Sinusoidal obstruction syndrome, or SOS, is one of the most serious early complications of pediatric bone marrow transplantation. This happens in about 2 to 14% of children undergoing bone marrow transplantation, and it has a higher than 80% mortality. Conditioning therapy causes sinusoidal endothelial injury, which leads to a blocked hepatic blood flow, and then hepatic failure, and then multi-organ failure, and eventually death in 80% of the cases. The unmet need here that these patients are often diagnosed late because the current risk factors are not accurate enough to identify them. A possible solution could be biomarkers such as preconditioning uric acid and IGF-1, and they may help us detect this complication before the clinical symptoms appear. Early identification could help us use preventive measures and therefore improve outcomes in these cases, which leads to our aim, which is to assess whether blood biomarkers can predict early SOS in pediatric bone marrow transplantation. We used the PERT framework here with the clinical question, do novel biomarker levels could improve early diagnosis or risk stratification of SOS compared with standard clinical risk factors or normal biomarker levels. Population was pediatric patients undergoing bone marrow transplantation. The index test is novel biomarker levels. The reference test is standard clinical risk factors or normal biomarker levels. And the diagnosis of interest is early diagnosis or risk stratification. The hypothesis here is that, yes, early biomarker levels can improve the identification of these cases compared to standard clinical risk factors. And if this is true, the clinical implication would be personalized prophylaxis and early intervention in these cases. To sum up my presentation, we have 2 ongoing projects. The first one we would like to submit before this September, and the second one by the end of June next year. I would like to end my presentation with a quote from Aaron T. Beck: "The most powerful person in the world is the storyteller. The storyteller sets the vision, the values, and the agenda of an entire generation." Thank you for your attention.
Congratulations for your presentation, and forgive me if I ask a silly or fool question, but the GLP-1 analogs increase the insulin levels, am I right? And this insulin is a growing factor, so it isn't a risk for later who had a brain tumor. I don't know, this is why my question. So it isn't a risk for the relapse? It's a silly question, maybe.
I don't think it's a silly question. There's a good thought to it. I've read multiple articles on this topic, and none of them mention this. This is a really nice perspective. I don't think they... I didn't find any studies which talked about this, actually. But this is a good
Thank you.
question. Thank you.
Noémi, I have a second question, a question for the second part. You mentioned biomarkers.
Yes.
Is it blood biomarkers? What kind of specific biomarkers you mean?
So we would like to focus on two main biomarkers. One of them is IGF-1 and the other one is uric acid.
Okay, and how specific they are? Because as you mentioned these two, it might be related some other diseases. How would it mislead the guess whether we have SOS or other diseases? Because they are general biomarkers, and that's why I wanted to know, as you mentioned these two, I believe they are not specific.
Yeah, thank you for the question. This is a really good point, I think. These are actually really general biomarkers. And this project is right now on hold, so there is no data that we extracted yet. But the preliminary research, I read the articles. Like, these are not specific, but could be helpful. At this point, one of the reasons that we would like to look into it more is to see if there's an actual connection and to see if this is actually a good biomarker to assess these cases. But the IGF-1 is like synthesized in the liver, so that's one aspect why it could be a good, because if it's already low, then that could suggest that the liver has less things left in them, basically. Yeah.
Thank you for your presentation. My question is regarding your first project. You show that there is 29 eligible articles.
Yes.
You showed 6 regarding GLP, and are there any other agent that they use, or?
So the problem, or not the problem, but the difficulty with this project was the used interventions were really heterogeneous. And regarding the pharmacotherapy, only the GLP-1 receptor agonists were poolable. There were other types of medications like stimulants, for example, but there were not like 3 articles regarding one pharmacotherapy agent that could be pulled together, basically. And we also have some figures about the bariatric surgery, but we are still analyzing those. But the pharmacotherapy agents, it was only the GLP-1 receptor agonist that could be pulled together, basically.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Congrats. Out of just pure curiosity, do you know what's the main difference in BMI change in non-oncological patients with GLP-1 agonists? So is it comparable? Is it similar? Is it higher in these population?
Thank you for the question. Actually, we really focused on this population, so I don't have exact data on that, but for example, in bariatric surgery, there were a lot of articles that compared common obesity with hypothalamic obesity, and in that case, there were significant differences between the two populations. It's a different mechanism, so I wouldn't draw a conclusion about that, but there might be some more effect in the general population, I think.
It's because I feel for you, because you have basically negative results, non-significant results, and so with comparing, so putting this into the picture and comparing with the normal obesity, and then you might have a significant result, and then you can elevate your works.
Okay, thank you so much.